Born in Berea, Kentucky, Ann Shelby grew up in eastern Kentucky where her family has lived for generations. She's the author of poems, plays, essays, and children's books, including The Man Who Lived in a Hollow Tree and the award-winning Adventures of Molly Whoopie and Other Appalachian Folk Tales. With Ann tonight is her friend Kate Larkin and children from the School of the Lexington Ballet.
Jack was living up at the head of the holler with his mommy and his daddy and his brothers, Will and Tom. They were not rich. In fact, they didn't have anything except just one another and some very nice scenery. The daddy said to the boys, he said, "Boys, Christmas is not going to come this year, not to this house. If Christmas won't come to our house," said Will, "we'll just go out and get it," said Tom. "It's the stupidest plan I ever heard in my life," said the daddy. He was listening at the door. So he tried to talk him out of it, but the mommy said, "You are wasting your breath," and she started in baking journey cakes. Journey cakes are what people in folk tales eat when they ever go on a trip. Will and Tom, they had a plan of their own. So they got up real early and slipped around real quiet and sneaked off and left Jack asleep in the bed. They just wanted to keep all the presents for themselves. Will and Tom walked on, and they met this old man. And the old man said to him, "Boys, has either one of you got a little bite of something? I've not had anything to eat in 2-3 days." "Sorry, old uncle," said Will. "We'll be needing everything we've got our own selves." Well, they walked on, and they met an old woman. And that old woman was out there in that real cold weather with just a thin little cotton dress on and carrying an empty basket on her arm. "Could one of you boys let me wear your coat a minute? I'm about froze to death out here." "Sorry, old sister," said Will. "We'll be needing our coats ourselves." Well, they walked along, and it began to get dark. And that's when they saw it a-coming. Way down the road, they had no more notion than a goose what it was, and it was headed right at them. So Will and Tom turned around, took off as hard as they could go. Early the next morning, Jack got up and he said to his mommy, he said, "Well, I guess I'll just go on up to the North Pole by myself then." And so his mommy gave him the journey cakes and he put on his old raggedy coat and lit out. Well, he walked and he met that old man. And the old man said, "Jack, have you got a bite of anything that you could give me to eat?" "Why, sure," said Jack, and he pulled out the journey cakes. "Jack, you've been so good to me. I want to give you some." And he reached down in his pocket, and he come up with 3 little bean seeds. They were about the size of a pinto bean, but they were green as grass, and they sparkled like sunlight on water. "They are Christmas beans," the old man said. So Jack, he couldn't wait to see what a Christmas bean did. So he took one of the beans, dug a little hole in the ground, stuck that bean down in there, covered it up, and in about 2 shakes of a sheep's tail, there sprung up from that tree the biggest, prettiest Christmas tree you ever saw in your life. Presents grew on that tree like apples. And then Jack said, well, he better go. So they parted ways. Well, Jack walked on, and he met that old woman. She said, "Jack, would you let me wear your coat a minute? I'm about froze." "Why, sure," said Jack. And he pulled his coat off and gave it to her. And she wore it a little while, and after she got a little bit warm, she handed him her basket. And she said, "Now, whenever you want something to eat, you just take this basket and say, 'Fill, basket, fill.'" He took the basket and he said, "Fill, basket, fill." And a big ham jumped out of it. And then some chicken and dumplings and turkey and dressing and 2 chocolate pies. So Jack went on down the road, and it began to get dark. And that's when he saw it a-coming. and it was headed right at him. "I cannot wait to see what that is," said Jack. Then he walked towards it faster. And so then in a minute, there Jack was standing there looking at a big white bear, which stuck out a furry paw and said, "Merry Christmas, Jack." "Merry Christmas, Bear," Jack said back. "What are you doing out such a cold, dark night as this?" "Well, what do you reckon I'm a-doing?" said the bear. "I'm out here looking for somebody to spend Christmas Eve with." Jack pulled out that basket. Basket fill," said Jack. And he pulled out a Christmas bean, and there sprung up the big, pretty Christmas tree. And Jack and that bear had them a spree, buddy, right there. Told tales, sang songs, played music all night long, and danced a Christmas jig. It was a real clear night, and the sky was full of stars. And they looked so close and they shone so bright that Jack felt like he could just reach up and get one. But the bear did it. He reached up and pulled down a star, and he tucked it, still warm, into the palm of Jack's hand. And before you could say Merry Christmas, Jack was sitting on the soft, strong back of a bear. And before you could say Happy New Year, they were flying through the air, just as the sun came up on Christmas morning. When he got home, his mommy and daddy, they were so tickled to see him. But Will and Tom, "Well, where's Christmas at, Jack?" said Will. "All I see's an empty basket," said Tom. "Fill, basket, fill," said Jack. And he pulled out that last Christmas bean. And didn't they have a big time then? If he ever did make it up to the North Pole, I never did hear anything about it. But pole or no pole, Jack found Christmas.